Hey guys, on this particular episode, I'm going to be talking about why it never actually occurred to me to be afraid of hospitals. Throughout my life, people have always said that they hate going to the doctors, they hate going to the hospital, that they're terrified of it. And I could never quite understand that because the experience that I've had of hospitals has been largely positive. Having come to the country when I was quite young, my very first hospital was the world famous Great Ormond Street Hospital, which is a specialised hospital specifically for children. Now, for those that have never been to Great Ormond Street, all I can say is it's like the Disneyland of hospitals. Although it would be creepy for you to go in there if you don't have a child and you have absolutely no reason to be there, I would suggest Googling photos of the hospital itself. It's an absolute dream. Having essentially grown up with polio, I have had to get used to various hospital visits and so many x-rays that I can't even count them all. What's really amazing about Great Ormond Street is that, as I said, it's specifically designed for children, so they make it bright, colourful, and just fun. At home at the time, I didn't have any game consoles. No Nintendos, there were no PlayStations, and there were no Sega Mega Drives. I'm aging myself with these, but anyway. There wasn't anything in the house similar to what I was able to experience when I was at the hospital. So I usually actually looked forward going to the hospital and I could enjoy all these different games. And they made it so that as a child, you weren't focusing on your disability, but you couldn't wait to leave the doctor just so you'd be able to play. And for me, it was kind of a bummer every time that I had to leave. Another reason why I was never scared of the hospital was that it never occurred to me that going into surgery that I might not come out. Having come from Nigeria, where unfortunately the medical services are still not what I would like them to be, being in the UK meant that I had access to these amazing doctors with all this knowledge that was available at their fingertips, the amazing things that they could do with scalpels. And for me, this was a great opportunity because I was not going to be able to have that back home in Nigeria. Polio would have essentially been a death sentence for me because the caliper that I use, the crutches that I need, the ferrules that go on the end of my crutches, these things are very expensive. And I wouldn't have been able to afford this back in Nigeria because it would have essentially bankrupted me and my family. So I am so grateful for the NHS that we do have here because I felt so taken care of and so safe as well. These doctors and nurses, they knew exactly what they were doing and they had the resources, because this isn't to shade on the medical services in Nigeria. They're only able to do as much as the resources will allow them because it's just not up to the standard that people would need back at home, so that polio need not be a death sentence, and that even if a person does survive it, that they're not left poor, that they're not left living in abject poverty because of the fact that access to healthcare is a right. While I was under the care of Great Ormond Street and I needed a surgery, it was absolutely amazing to me that I was able to have my own private room, and there was also a bed for my mother to be able to stay with me as well. While I did not appreciate it when I was younger because my mother would be fussing and fretting over me like, oh, my child has just been through major surgery, I didn't realize what I would miss when I turned 18 and unfortunately got that horrible letter that I was no longer under the care of Great Ormond Street. I didn't even think about the fact that it was actually a children's hospital. And the second that I turned 18, I was no longer legally a child. I felt like I was being punished for getting older. I was like, no, please, Great Ormond Street, let me back in. Please, please, please. You guys are the best. I need you. Since aging out of the care of Great Ormond Street, I've been moved to an adult hospital. Now, what it made me realize is why people hated going to the hospital. I had to have surgery on my right leg, and I had presumed, as it had happened before in Great Ormond Street, that my mother would be able to stay with me. I was incorrect, unfortunately. I was in a ward with other people, and it never occurred to me that my mother wouldn't be able to stay because there was no space for her to stay in, because this was no longer a private room. And even though I hated it in the past and got annoyed and be like, oh, mother, I don't need all this attention that you're throwing on me, when the nurse came over to tell my parents that actually visiting time is over and they had to leave, I was just like, oh my goodness, I'm actually going to have to sleep here in this hospital tonight by myself. I was not prepared. And even though, of course, I got 5-star service from the hospital, it it couldn't compare to what I'd gotten used to when I was, let's be honest, spoiled by Great Ormond Street. I'd gotten used to such a level of service that obviously children would require, especially kids that have to be in and out of hospitals. So the reason that it never occurred to me to be afraid of the hospital or to be afraid of doctors was because I'd gotten excellent care throughout. From the moment that I'd arrived in the UK up until now, I've always gotten such excellent service. And I will say a huge shout out to the NHS. While as Britons, we do love to complain about anything and everything, including the weather, the NHS is a godsend, really. And just to put this out to Great Ormond Street, even though I have completely aged out, if you guys will let me back in, I'd like to come back. Hey, this is Jay from Jayonlife. Thanks for watching my video. If you've liked what you've seen, and even if you don't like it, make sure to click subscribe. You can find me on different social media under Jayonlife. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Google+. Be sure to check out more of my stories on my blog, www.jayonlife.com, and I hope to see you soon.